guys, welcome back to the podcast. My name's Andrew Bolton, and Pastor, today we have a special guest.
Yes.
You've heard of her in the room,
Yeah.
but today she's sitting with us at the table because Candy's out. Miss Vivian Pignol. How you
Yes.
doing, Miss Vivian?
How y'all doing? I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so Viv is...
Put that mic closer because we want to get all of your voice
Exactly.
on the,
So Viv is what I like to call my work mom. I've known Vivian literally my whole life. She was my Sunday school teacher growing up. So Vivian,
Wow.
thank you for sitting in with
Look
us.
what you've done with this guy.
Exactly.
So
Look
good.
how much sharper I've gotten under your leadership than
There
Vivian's
you
leadership.
go.
Oh,
That's all right.
Oh my
Joking.
gosh, yeah.
Okay, so before we get
Vivian
into...
does connections at Long
That's
Hollow.
right, that's
and-
right. She
and
is...
she's we call her the human Velcro here. She's always
Yeah.
connecting.
And she always has a story as well. So
Oh, gosh.
anytime we need a story
I love
what
it.
Guy's doing, we go to Vivian. She's
Yes.
got all the stories. So
Yes. Candy's on location speaking at a women's event.
Yeah.
And so instead of a rose between two thorns, we have a tulip
That's right.
between two
That's
thorns
right.
today.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
so
here we go.
I need to address something before we get into
Okay.
the purpose of John the Baptist. So a couple weeks ago, I need to apologize to Canes, Raising Canes. I
Yeah.
was venting about you love their chicken. I think it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't like that I had to pay for a refill of lemonade. I
Yeah.
just didn't think that was fair. But because we have the best podcast listeners ever, somebody actually brought me a gallon of Canes lemonade.
To church. Come
and
on.
and I have it to share just in case. So
Are you kidding me?
I'm just saying, if
Wow.
we get parched in this
Okay.
conversation at
Look,
any
he's even
point,
got cups. The Canes.
I brought
lemonade.
cups. If you get
Wow.
parched at any time, thank you to our podcast listeners.
And this is not sponsored by Cane's,
but
but
sponsored by great listeners.
But I love Canes. So.
Okay. Moving on. So if you want
I
to eliminate
appreciate that.
anytime,
Thank
just
you.
give me
I appreciate
give me
that.
the nod. I'll pour you a cup.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
So, Pastor, today we're getting into the purpose
Yes.
of John the Baptist,
Yeah, we've learned about his attire. We've learned
right.
about his dress. We've learned about his message,
his diet.
his diet. We learned about the manner of baptism last week. Let's talk about the purpose of John the Baptist. So, Vivian, why don't you start us off? Just for context, we're going to read chapter 3 of Matthew, if you're with us. We're going to read chapter 3, verses 1, and I'll stop you whenever we need to.
Okay. In those days, John the Baptist came, preaching in the wilderness of Judea and saying, Repent, because the kingdom of heaven has come near. For he is the one spoken of through the prophet Isaiah, who said, A voice of one crying out in the wilderness, Prepare the way for the Lord, make his paths straight. Now John had a camel hair garment with a leather belt around his waist, and his food was locusts and wild honey. Then people from Jerusalem, all Judea, and all the vicinity of the Jordan were going out to him, and they were baptized by him in the Jordan River, confessing their sins.
Okay, perfect. Let's stop there. That's good. Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about today, before we get into the purpose, we need to know the place that John is.
Okay.
What is the context here of John the Baptist? Where is he preaching? And we discussed this a little bit in the past, but where is John the Baptist preaching this message?
Okay, it says in the wilderness of Judea.
Okay, so he's in the wilderness. Now, the natural question becomes, why is a priest who has every right to be in the temple preaching in the wilderness, of all things? And don't think, remember, wilderness is not luscious green rolling hills and, the Tuscany mountain,
Right.
hills of Italy. That's what we normally think. This is what?
Like dry desert.
Dry, desert, heat, humidity. So John is in the desert preaching this message. Why is he in the desert? Why do you think? What would be the point? Because remember, when the authors of the Gospels put these little nuggets in, they're not by happenstance or by accident. If they only have so many words to write, you have to remember this was not like today's time when you can write endless words in a book. Right. They only had so much time. They had so much papyrus or so many pages of vellum or the animal skin. So they were very meticulous with their words. Why does he put the desert? What do you think?
I mean, my quick answer would be to fulfill the prophecy of Isaiah.
Ooh, that's
that's
good.
what Isaiah said.
That's good. Well, that's the pretty standard way. Yes. Okay.
I'm just.
No, I'm saying that's pretty simple. That's pretty.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't.
That's a great answer, Andrew.
No,
That's
what I was
you meant
trying to say. Don't miss the simplistic explanation,
Yeah.
because sometimes we want to go so deep we miss exactly what's happening. So yes, it's to fulfill Isaiah's prophecy, which said, if you go to the desert, the wilderness, and prepare the way, what does Isaiah say? Prepare the way for the Lord. And if you read the rest of the context of that passage in Isaiah, you know what's going to happen? He's going to say, if you do that, the glory of God will come.
Yeah.
The glory of God will come. So, yes. Now, the question then becomes, then why? Let's go back to Isaiah if we're going to use this. Why does Isaiah say this? Why does God use Isaiah to say this? Go to the wilderness. That's the point I'm getting at. Why the wilderness? Why not the palace? You would think the Messiah would come in the palace. Why not on the mountaintop of Jerusalem where, Abraham sacrificed Isaac? Why not in Galilee where, a lot of the rabbinical schools are? Why do you have him coming in the wilderness?
I mean, I have a thought, but I don't have a clue if it's correct.
You might as well go.
My thought is just the contrast between the barrenness of the wilderness and then the religiosity of what's going on in the synagogues. And
You're getting close to it, yes. Because you would expect God's Son, to come being wined and dined and taken care of, and indoor air conditioning and indoor plumbing, in a sense, air conditioning with fans blowing, the luxuries of the role, fine garments. That's what you would expect.
Right.
A king, a queen, a dignitary. But that's not how he comes. He comes in the wilderness, I think, to make a statement. Okay? The wilderness is a place of three things. Okay? When you hear wilderness, you're thinking of three things. Okay?
Yeah.
And I want to teach you what the wilderness reveals. Okay? If you're taking notes, you can follow along. Number one is this: the wilderness is a place of separation. All through the Bible now. All through the Bible. The wilderness is a place of separation. What do I mean by that? What is God trying to separate from a person's life? Whether it's Moses, hey Mo, come up to the mountain. We're going to spend some time in the mountain in the wilderness. Or whether it's Elijah, come to the wilderness.
Yeah.
distraction.
Separation from distraction, but what else?
I mean, when I think of like the Israelites wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, I think maybe God's trying to separate them from a culture and maybe start a new thing.
Yes, dependence. So when you're in the wilderness, think about this, and you're separated from every bit of comfort.
Yeah.
The Israelites would say, hey, listen, we know we're free. We know we can worship. We know we're not, building bricks. We know we're not working 7 days a week, but we'd rather go back to that.
Right.
Even though we have freedom now, we'd rather go back to that because of the security, false security, the comfort. Yeah. And so when you're separated in the wilderness, it's a place of dependence. It's a place where you have to depend upon a lot. And here's what the Lord does in the wilderness. He expands your belief through testing. The wilderness is code word for a place of testing.
Right.
That's what God does. In fact, another way to determine testing is a number. Guess of all the numbers in the that you could pick from, what number does the Jewish nation associate with testing? There's one number. When you see this number, it's always testing.
Could it also mean something else, or is it only testing?
I don't know. What's the number you're thinking?
Well, I was going to go with 6 because it's not like a complete thing yet.
Ooh, that's good. Okay, it's the number 40.
40.
40 is the number testing. Yes. Did Chris get that one?
Can I divide 40 by
Chris listens to the podcast, by the way. He actually listens because he edits. But anyway, no, the number 40 is testing.
Okay, I should have
40
said 40.
days,
That makes sense,
40 nights, 40 days of rain with Noah.
Yeah.
40 days of wandering, 40 days on the mountain, 40 years of wandering. It's all testing.
40.
Okay. Jesus,
I'm about
by the
to turn
way.
40. Oh.
That is a test.
Yes, that's going to be a test.
That is a test. Okay. The wilderness also reveals if you're truly walking with God. You can't fake it in the wilderness. You can fake it in the palace. You can't fake it in the wilderness. You can fake it in a church house. You can't fake it when you're tested. And that's almost why I think God allows testing in a Christian's life to determine if what we say is actually who we are. Okay?
Yeah.
And again, the line I say about Israel, when God took the nation of Israel out of Egypt, why did they wander for 40 years? Because that was like a 6-month trip. If you look at the map, they could have gone straight across Sinai. They could have gone right to Canaan, and they would have been there. Why 40 years? And like I say, God didn't just have to get Israel out of Egypt. God had to get Egypt out of Israel.
Right.
God had to get the worldliness out of the people before they could go into the promised land. Okay, here's the second insight from wilderness. When you see the wilderness, place of separation. Number 2, a place of preparation. Preparation. Now, what do I mean by that? Vivian, any idea?
Preparation.
Place of preparation.
Again, it goes back to I think that the desperation, the dependence of trying to, just erase, diminish other things to prepare you for just kind of stripping away,
Yeah.
kind of a stripping away.
Yeah, because remember, they had other gods, they had other temptations, they had other idols. And so God's preparing them for something great. Andrew, you going to say something about that? Place of preparation?
Well, no, I mean, I can't help but think in illustrations like all the time.
Yeah.
Life's a big illustration to me.
Yeah.
So I just thought of the phrase like no pain, no gain. Like whether you're working out or whatever. So I hear, because I don't really work out
Yeah.
much. But
If you did, though.
But
If you did
there's-
work out,
But I'm told it's not much of a workout unless you felt the pain.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what
how
I'm
working
saying?
out
So-
works, by the way.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
actually
so-
have to tear the muscle to build
exactly.
muscle. Yeah,
exactly.
you have to tear it.
So seasons of wilderness and pain is also a season of preparation like that. That makes sense.
Yeah. God says, I brought you out of Egypt and humbled you out of my love for you. So the humility of God, which normally is associated with pain and suffering and wandering and lingering, is actually the kindness of God.
Yeah.
Because remember, he says, I discipline those I
Love.
love. Right?
Same with our kids.
Same with your kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's how preparation works. God is always preparing you in a wilderness season. And hang on, because I'm going to apply this to your life if you're listening in a moment,
Yeah.
and I think it'll make sense. But God always is preparing you in the present for something greater in the future.
Right.
Here's the way I like to look at it in my own life. God is watching you when no one's looking at you to determine if he can trust you. The Christian life, you can break it down into trust. Can I trust you with little
Yeah.
or a little bit when no one's watching, so that when everyone's watching and I entrust you with much, you're not going to fall. God always wants the best for you.
Yeah.
And listen, if God hasn't given you that new promotion or that new raise or the new level of income or the new preaching opportunity or the new position, whatever it is in your life, or the relationship you're praying and waiting for, it may be because if God gives you that as a gift, that gift can turn into a blessing if you're not in a position to receive it.
You mean a burden?
A burden, yeah.
burden,
Yeah, a burden if you're not ready to receive it.
Yeah.
So what on the appearance looks good, a new relationship.
Right.
Like I always say, if I would have met Candy any time before I did,
Right. Yeah.
I would have screwed it up royally. And then she would have been like, in the past we have relationships and we're like, I wonder if that would have worked out. Well, now the relationships before Candy, thank God they didn't work out, but I would have missed one.
Right.
Because I wasn't ready. Right. So God is always preparing us for something greater in the future. And you may say, like, for example, you say, I believe in God. Well, the wilderness is a place where God says, well, prove it.
Yeah.
You say you believe in me, prove it.
Right.
The line I like to use is this: we know what we believe, but do you believe what you know?
Yeah.
And I learned that line in seminary, where a lot of people could debate the finer tenets of soteriology and justification by faith and eschatology and premillennial. They knew all the answers in their head. They knew what they believed,
Right.
but they didn't actually live out or have faithfulness in what they knew.
Yeah.
And I see that all the time in the Christian life. We see that all the time in our life. All right, number 3, place of separation, place of preparation. Watch this. The wilderness is also, number 3, a place of revelation. And this is the one that's going to bring us back. You're going to love this. Okay, what do I mean by revelation?
Well, I mean, even in your own story, you talk about just recently in the past couple of years, your season of silence and solitude and how the Lord started to reveal things to you in that season of separation. The wilderness on the porch, you may say.
Yes, exactly. And for somebody like me, you would think, man, revelation, what would God reveal to you? You got degrees in seminary and you've been with the Lord in a while. No, God is always trying to take us from faith to faith or from grace to grace, another level of intimacy. And so what I tell people is, if you want to have a more robust, fruitful, thriving relationship with Jesus Christ, you have to learn more about him. Because everything in the Christian life hinges, and maybe, Robert, we could put this diagram up. It's a simple diagram. I just started meeting with a guy last week, for the first time, and I just went out. I just said, hey, let me show you how the Christian life works. Very simplistically. I know this is going to be simple, but follow me. And I drew a diagram. I said at the top of the diagram is knowing God or knowing Christ. We talk about this. If you go down to the right side, just the side of the diagram, it's loving God. So knowing God with an arrow to loving God. And then if you go across the bottom of the triangle, you've seen me use this before, then it's what?
Obeying God.
Obeying God.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after you obey God, then it goes back to knowing. Now watch this.
It's a cycle.
Yeah, it's a cycle. It moves in a cycle. Now here's how it works. If you don't love God right now presently, and here's how you know if you love God, because if you love God, you're going to obey God willingly, not begrudgingly. And you want to obey God. You want to serve the Lord. You have a propensity to prayer. You have a desire to read the Word. If you don't have that, I'd go back to see if you love God. You're saying, yeah, I love God. Okay. Do you? Because if you love Him, you obey Him. Now, they're probably saying, well, I don't know if I really love Him. If you don't really love Him fully, it may be because you don't know Him personally or intimately.
Right. You may know of Him.
You may know of Him.
Right.
It's like when you got married to Jenny or you got married to Kelvin. When you and Kelvin got married, how long y'all been married?
It'll be 40 in October.
40 years.
More than
40
you've been
years.
alive.
And yeah.
So she was your Sunday school teacher.
She was, I promise you. Yeah.
You don't look a day over 30. I don't know how you got there, but anyway, okay. But here's the deal:
coconut
40,
oil,
and we're making 20 this year. So y'all got 40, make 20 in December. So we got two big ones. Okay, here's the thing: when you were on that platform, the altar back then, and getting married, when you were looking into Calvin's eyes, and if the preacher would have stopped and said, "Vivian, do you love this man completely? Is there any way you would love this man more than you do now?" You would say what?
No.
No way. Not at that moment.
Not in that moment.
You would have said, no, I love this man fully, completely. Now, 40 years later, I would say I have a 20-year mark, but I'm not. You got another 20. Okay. You've been with the same man for 40 years. Good man, by the way. We love Kelvin. But here's the thing about Kelvin. Could you say today, I love this man way more than I loved him 40 years ago? Okay.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because I know him better.
Totally. That's the key.
Yeah.
The reason you love him more, the reason you have a deeper desire and a passion to be with, because you know more about him. It's the same thing with Jenny or Candy. The reason we love our spouses more today than back then is because we know more about them. And the more about them you learn, the more you love. Now watch this. This is how Jesus works. This is why you're listening to the podcast. This is why you're studying the Bible, because we're trying to show you one little insight, one little perspective, one different angle, and you see a side of Jesus. And here's the thing about Jesus. There's never a part of Jesus you're going to discover that you're not going to love.
Yeah.
Never. He's unlike any person ever. Like sometimes, like I heard someone say to me, you know, they came to our church and they said, man, I've been really anxious about getting to know you as the senior pastor because, and they were a part, I'm not going to mention the church that was high and fell, but they said, the closer we got to the top, the more disappointed we became. Meaning the top level pastors.
For sure.
Like the moment we started pulling back the curtain. On stage, everybody loved the pastor. Everybody loved the pastor's wife. Everybody loved that they were kind and gentle. But the closer we got to them, saw them in their personal time, saw them off camera, saw them off the platform, we were more disappointed.
Yeah.
And I will tell you one thing about Jesus. The more you get closer to Jesus, the more you'll be excited, the more you'll be overwhelmed, because everything you know about Jesus is something you love. Now watch this. The more you know, you love, and then you obey. Now here's the cool insight, and this is all John 14:15. The more you obey Jesus, that's when Jesus says, I can trust this man. I can trust this woman. So then it goes back to the top again. Then he begins to reveal himself more fully to you. So then you learn a whole nother avenue, a whole nother insight, a whole nother perspective of Jesus, which starts the process again. I just love this. Then you love him more, and then you obey. So that's the Christian life simplistically, right?
So I want to say something that just kind of hit me. I think it's important. I think you mentioned the closer people may get to leadership, the more disappointed they may be. And that is why it's so important you put your faith in Jesus and not a pastor or a church building or anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, because we are flawed humans. We are messed up, and we're doing our best. You know what I'm saying? But people fall all the time. But
Same struggles, same
Jesus will
passion.
never let you
Never.
down.
Yeah.
Never.
Or not even, like, I would even say, not even in a man for, like, that's our.
The Hot Pocket's done.
Okay, good. I'm glad you got that. Well, that's going to go with our lemonade on the
Yeah,
table.
that's right. Sorry, the timer just
But
went
I
off.
would say, too, not just a moral failure or something negative. It could be a departure.
Right.
Like God sometimes calls pastors
for
away.
sure.
Or in our case at Long Hollow, a passing, a death.
For sure. Yeah.
And so it's easy for us to kind of see this person. Okay, let me just finish this. A place of revelation. Moses saw God personally in the wilderness. Elijah saw and met with God. You ready for this? Not in the palace, not in front of the crowds. It was in the quietness of being alone in the wilderness. John saw the glory of God where?
Wow.
In the wilderness. Here's the point I want to say, and I want you to hang on if you're in the wilderness now. It's in the wilderness of life, the difficult times, the challenging times, the separation times, the preparation times. It's in those times where you see the glory of God,
Yeah.
the most pronounced in our own life. Now, let me just tell you what's happening with John, which is pretty crazy. When John meets Jesus, John has already started his ministry. John has a good thing going here. Okay, and we'll get into some of this next week. John's ministry, the 501c3 has already been filed, approved by the Jerusalem IRS. They are ready to roll. John's already
Locust and Wild Honey LLC.
yeah, they are rolling. Camel skin hairs. And
Yeah.
John's preaching like a wild man. The crowds are building, and people are saying, "This is the." How many times are you the guy? John's like, "What? No, I'm not the guy." But thank you for that. It seems on the surface like he has everything: accolades, audience, aspirations, goals, all his plans. He's doing exactly what God called him to do, and he's got this big enterprise, if you will. Only to do one thing with it. And this is what's always blown me away by John. John knows his purpose from the beginning.
Yeah.
I wonder, and here's the question I wanted to leave us with, we're going to think about. I wonder if we would have responded the same. Vivian, read John chapter 3. Watch this. John chapter 3, verse 30. Because this is his mantra. This is his motto. He knows it. Now we know the story, so it's hard for us not to see. But I wonder how many times in John's mind, he was tempted by the enemy to say, "You're not going to give this to Jesus. He's a nobody. He's your cousin. Yeah, but there's nothing. You built this ministry. You led this crowd. You baptized it, right? Okay, read this. John 3:30. This is John's mission.
He must increase, but I must decrease.
Okay. He must increase, so I must decrease. Here's let me put it in real world terms. Could you build $1 billion company, $1 million company, and at the height of the ministry or the business, turn around and give the keys to someone else and walk away in anonymity and obscurity? Could you build a sales team over 10 years, if you will? Very successful, articles written about you, Inc. magazine, Success magazine, and then only to turn around, give it to someone else, and walk away. Let me say it this way. Could you build a church or a ministry, have a huge following, preaching on a national stage, and then walk away and say, "Hey, this isn't about me, it's about you"? Here's a prayer that will help you pray to that end. And I heard this prayer by a pastor years ago. Here's a prayer I try to pray. I don't do it often, but when I think about it, it's very helpful. Here's a prayer I pray. God, guide my steps and guide my stops. Say that again. Guide my steps, guide my stops. Sometimes, listen to me, the most spiritual thing you can do in your Christian life is to walk away from something.
Wow.
Stopping something instead of starting something. I had a mentor tell me years ago, he said, "Robbie, sometimes open doors in your path are not always there for you to walk through them.
Right.
Sometimes God puts an open door in your life for you to walk past it."
Yeah.
Past it. Everything has a life cycle, right? So I wonder, and I've asked myself a lot about this, I wonder if I could have done that like John. Now we say, "Oh, it's Jesus," but you got to understand, he doesn't know Jesus as we know Jesus. It'd be like you going up to Chris Clapp, let's say. Okay? We love Chris Clapp. But we hadn't been around Chris Clapp enough to know that
yeah.
if Chris Clapp was Jesus, he's going to be the Messiah. So it's
yeah.
Chris. We love Chris. But you've been around for a while. You know the terrain. You have a big following. These are people you love. Could you literally say, I'm going to give this away
Yeah.
and just walk away from it? And I think here's the thing he understands, and I'll close with this. John the Baptist understands what Simon Sinek wrote about in a book called The Infinite Game. It's a book I read a while back. We've heard of this book before.
Yeah.
The Infinite Game is this. It's a long story, but it's an idea that if you build something for the benefit of you, or if you build something where you benefit in the moment, then it will die when you die.
Right.
The infinite game is, but when you build something and dream of something that you never fully realize or see or experience, but you're building for it, then it will outlast you. You're actually building a legacy
Right.
that will continue long after you're gone. Now, here's what's cool. Isn't that men and women of the Bible? Watch this. Abraham was promised descendants he would never see.
Right.
Moses was promised a land he would never enter. David envisioned a temple he would never build.
Yeah.
Isaiah promised a Messiah he would never meet. And all of these men are men we still talk about today. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're in the wilderness, take note. Is it a place of preparation? Is it a place of separation? God taking some things away for a level of trust. And maybe it's a place of revelation. You're going to see a picture of God in a way you've never seen
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. Well, I also want to encourage you, if you do find yourself in the wilderness, there may be some very small, practical next right steps for you to kind of kickstart this cycle. Simply spending time in God's Word. Spending time in God's Word for me is just like spending time with my wife. That is where the relationship's built, the intimacy's built, and then obeying as He prompts your heart. So I think all these things may help you kind of learn whatever you need to learn in the midst of this season of the wilderness.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's what we talk about in our groups this week. Talk about if you're in a wilderness season, or maybe you just came out of one, and you could talk about, did you learn, did God use it as a place of separation?
Yeah.
Did He use it? And it's not always the same three. It could be one of the three or all. But the key point is, never miss an opportunity to learn.
Right.
There's always a lesson in the suffering.
Yep.
And if we don't learn the lesson the first time, God has a way of bringing it back until we learn it, and it becomes increasingly harder along the way in the future.
Yeah. Okay, so was it a season of separation, preparation, or revelation?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay,
I like that.
awesome. Well, hey, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, leave a review. Man, that helps us reach more people. We're praying for you as you're having your discussions in your groups. Love hearing about those going on. And also, if you'd like to connect, you can find us on social media on Instagram at The Forgotten Jesus. Vivian, thank you for sitting in with us.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome anytime. All right, thank you, Pastor. We'll see you on the next one.